Hi, my name is Chris Candy, and this is the Never Not Run podcast. Or no.
Or do the NNR for.
This is the Never Not Run podcast. I'm your host, Chris Candy.
And I'm Mark Nieto.
I guess we've started. Welcome to...
I just want to say my appearance is brought to you by Vitalite, the number one searched electrolyte replacement I found on Google. I drink it every morning and in the afternoon after my coffee.
You got the cool citrus flavor.
Cool citrus. It's got real sugar in it for all you wusses who don't like sugar.
Okay, all right. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Never Not Run podcast. I'm your host, Chris Candy, along with...
Mark Nieto.
And we just lost Dan. No, we're really stoked to be back. Thank you for tuning in to week 1. We had a lot of outpouring of love. Like and comment. That is what makes us feel good about what we're doing.
A lot of good feedback. Really surprised at the amount of people that were checking out the show that are non-runners too, which is really surprising.
Yeah, we're just, we're getting into it, and we want to, each week bring in, really just people from like every walk of life. I think that's the cool thing that's like great about running is you can get all different types of people at different like levels. And we don't really want this to be like a pod for like, the elite runners, though we would like to get some of those people too. We really want to just talk to like everybody who's kind of doing this thing.
Yeah, it's
That's why you got me on.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Which brings us to our guest.
Yeah.
Our very first guest.
Yeah, on the Never Not Run podcast.
Daniel Pappas.
Dan is a director, a very talented writer, and a good friend of both Mark and I's. He's been at many Never Not Run meetups there since the inception, did the first chapter of my 4x4 run. He is an incredibly lovely individual and an avid health enthusiast.
Yeah, he was not joking about the electrolyte supplement. He's like, he just poured himself a big glass of it right now. So he's fueling up as we're talking.
Getting ready to go. So, Dan, thanks for being on the pod.
Yeah, lovely to be here.
So I don't know, like ever since I've known you, you like for the people who are listening, Dan and I work a lot together creatively. We've made projects and whatnot. And I've always known you to be doing all kinds of various things in regards to like exercise, fitness, all that kind of stuff. But how would you explain like your relationship with like physical activity?
Well, I definitely, I feel like if you were to chart my relationship with exercise since I moved to Los Angeles, I'm a pretty trendy individual in the sense that I'll like do something for 2 months, get really into it, and then I quit, and then I do something different 2 months later. And I think a lot of it has to do with my wife and my mother-in-law, and sort of they'll be like, go weight lift, or like go to this Pilates class, or go to this thing. And so I end up trying all these things out and nothing really sticks. I did that with soccer for years. Now it's tennis, and then running kind of on and off. Chris always gets me out there when he can, even though lately we haven't really run together for a long time.
True.
But I would say physical activity is pretty important. I also have a really bad sciatica problem. So the one thing that cures it is running. And every time I take a break from that, it flares back up. And then I'm like on my kitchen floor doing 10-minute yoga for sciatica exercises every day off YouTube. So yeah, I don't know.
Where did I guess I wanted to like back it up a little bit too. You were really doing a lot of soccer. Do you mind talking about the league that you had and how much running you were doing, and like how maybe that kind of tricked you into doing a lot more running than you normally would have, or were you running a lot during that time too?
No, I mean, I started playing soccer with a bunch of friends, and then it kind of grew into like a really rowdy pickup game with a bunch of people that weren't very good at it. It was
myself included.
Yeah.
You wrote me into it a couple times too.
Yeah, kind of managed to rope everybody we know into that. And
for the record, it was called Football Domingos. That was the name.
Yeah, it's called Football Domingos, and we had these flyers that probably would get us in trouble now. And we, it would be like 30 people every Sunday playing soccer, and it was that was something where we were like literally running probably like 4 to 7 miles every Sunday in that game.
Yeah.
So that became something where you really had to, at least I had to kind of supplement that with running during the week, because I just, couldn't keep up with everybody if I didn't do that. So that was probably the best shape I'd ever been in.
Right.
Honestly, because, I can't, that was also before we were like tracking our miles really on the phone and everything. But I gotta imagine my steps were through the roof when that was at its peak. So yeah, and then sort of like pandemic hit, and that, soccer was a kind of close contact sport. So I wasn't really trying to be that close with anybody. So that was sort of the end of it. But yeah, I mean, even to go back, because something you guys talked about in the first episode, and I feel like maybe it should be a recurring thing on every one of these, is
Please.
like get everyone to talk about having to run the mile in grade school.
Yeah.
That was like, man, talk about, like, I was a fat kid. So I did not have any interest in running a mile.
Right.
Like, they'd be like, go run a lap. I was like the last person to come in on the one lap.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Marin County. And I love sport. I always loved sports, but like, I always like to carry around an extra 30 to 40 pounds on me too, just to make it harder. And, I remember, like, there's a couple things when I listened to you guys talk about the mile. There's one thing I remember is that there was this one point, like, it might have been the first mile I ever ran. And there was this other kid named Ross Otto, who was a hefty fellow. And Ross has now gone on to become very skinny. He might live in like Austin, Texas now, but him and I were kind of like the heftier brothers on the school PE class.
Definitely.
And Ross, I remember, like, we took off running, and I didn't really see the incentive to run any faster than I wanted to, because it wasn't like it was going to change my grade, or I was still going to eat the same thing when I got home. So I was kind of like, I'm just going to go slow. And then I remember I was going slow, and Ross was ahead of me, and we were literally, I was in last, he was in second to last. And then I was kind of, man, this is kind of slow. And then I pull up alongside Ross, and he has like a Hawaiian shirt open. It's like, it's unbuttoned with his gut hanging out. And he wore like eyeglasses where, like, when it makes you look like you have like bug eyes, like the really thick frame.
Yeah.
And he kind of like looked over at me with the gut hanging, with the Hawaiian shirt flowing behind him. And I just had this moment where I was like, man, I cannot be last. Like, I got to beat Ross. And that propelled me to like ending second to last. And Ross like kind of walked in at the end. But it just was like I don't have many moments with running where like they evoke such a strong sort of like memory. And then the other one was in middle. I was probably like in second grade at that point. And then the other one was in middle school. They're like, all right, we're going to run a mile. We're going to do this once a week, every week. And I was like, I don't want to do this at all.
Right.
And I also was the shortest kid in my class until probably like I turned 16.
Okay.
Like we would do the school photo, and they would arrange everybody on a bleacher from the tallest to the shortest. And I was the only guy on the bottom row of the photo, because like the only people shorter than me were females. So it wasn't like I was coming out there with like a real runner's body. So I already was a bit of a disadvantage. And we went to run the mile, and I remember I had the similar thought on the mile. I was like, why would I run who cares how long this takes me, Right. And if I'm going to walk it, like, the teacher can't see me walking right now. And granted, I'm going to come in last, but I just really had this like horrible attitude towards running and even fitness, because it wasn't like, it was just like, it was fat. So I just figured, I was like, well, you're not gonna, like, girls don't really pay attention to you because you're like a short fat guy who hasn't hit puberty, and not like you're gonna play high school sports because you got that going against you too. So it didn't mean anything to me to like improve in that regard. And then as I got older and grew up and became an adult, running became something that, when I'm into it, I really do enjoy it. Like, I find it doesn't, I mean, obviously there's times that are harder than others, but I would have never imagined as like a, little 13-year-old who didn't want to run a mile, that this was something that I would end up finding like a real, great enjoyment in, because I don't know. I don't have the, like Chris, you got like a sort of masochistic, punish yourself relationship to running. I don't have that. To me, it's
Right.
maybe more of a meditative thing.
Sure.
And even something like, putting a podcast on and like blowing through a whole podcast series on a bunch of runs like that works really well for me. That's something I just totally enjoy that. And then beyond that, I mean, I like gear, so like any excuse to buy new stuff.
One thing I think a lot of people who are listening are going to be wondering, like, well, who's this Dan guy? Why is Dan on the pod? Well, one of the main reasons.
The only person you could get.
Yeah, we're the only person that we could get.
Hopefully, you can build off this with.
Exactly.
It's a slow burn.
It's a slow burn.
Exactly.
But Dan is really, really he's poignant on the items that he purchases. He really puts a lot of thought into the items he gets. And I'm curious, when it came to running, what were you looking for, and what were some of the things that you kind of dove into in regards to pieces of gear you liked? Because you research a lot. You're a researcher. You really like to go online and take a look at what you could potentially buy before you even make the purchase. I mean,
yeah,
because I feel no shame in sharing a nice pair of shoes with Dan. I'll be like, check out this new Hoka drop, and I feel like you're one of the only people I can share that with that will get as excited as I am about a new pair of shoes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, those people that don't get excited, tell them to call me, because that's a bad attitude that they have. Everyone should be excited about that. But I think, I don't know. I guess, running like any of these sports, you get to see like there's design, there's aesthetics, there's like the functionality of it. So I guess I always really wore Nike stuff until I started running more. And then Chris kind of got me into like Hoka's.
Well, initially it was Outdoor Voices, right? They gave us some shoes.
Yeah, they were giving them away. Yeah, that's true. That's what those shoes, those Outdoor Voices Hoka's, which I thought were pretty sweet looking, and they were nice to run in. Those, we got those from our friend who worked there, Aaron, and then I kind of ran those for a while, and then I found some like Solomon Satisfy running shoes, which I thought I really thought those looked really good. And I don't know, for some reason now I think Nikes are narrow, so I just don't know if I'll ever run in them again.
But Nike has really good shorts. I really like Nike's short game.
Yeah, there was one time in the pandemic where I also just want to say, like, I think one of the people who I really like their own personal style is Jürgen Teller, the photographer, because he always looks like he's going on a run, but he's got like a proper beer, like round beer belly. And one of the times, like early pandemic, and I don't ever intend to dress like Jürgen Teller. I just think I just like that he's always got like, it's always colors. Like the shoes are colorful, the shorts are colorful. They're always super short. And like the first time out in the pandemic where we saw each other, I met Chris and Sam at the racetrack, and I had just spent like days trying to track down these like Nike running shorts. And I think I found them at like Dick's Sporting Goods in Pasadena. And it's, it was like, you had to like drive up with the mask on and like grab it with like a rubber glove. It was like real, or like, you were like,
right.
You thought the Dick's guy was like giving you COVID by having your hand put in the boot now.
This might be the end of you. These pair of shorts.
Yeah.
You're gonna
like
die
I couldn't
after
tell anyone in my pod that I drove to Pasadena to buy these shorts. So it was like kind of like putting your life on the line for like a new pair of shorts.
Right.
And I put these things on and I was like, yeah, these are sick. Like got these, and then I got out to the track and out to the ranch, and we ran. And I there's a little bit of me, I was like, I'm a medium. Okay, these are pretty short. They're shorter than I'm normally used to wearing. And I remember Chris after the run, or Sam offered me like a pair of shorts, and they were like a size large, and I was kind of like, large, and as growing up a fat kid, like you never want anyone to tell you you're a large.
Right.
And so I was kind of like, large, dude, like what? And then I said something to Chris, and he's like, "Yeah, actually, I think you're probably a large. Those shorts you have on are a little small." And then I instantly had this thought where I was like, "Dude, I like look like Jurgen Teller with like the disgusting like my balls dropping out the bottom of the shorts with the gut. Like this is insane, you know." So, anyways, that was just something I didn't. I guess I manifested that. I didn't mean to have that happen, but those shorts, when I got the large, they were very good. And I definitely like those ones with the throw your phone in the back. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling.
No,
So
you're doing great.
I'm trying to think of other, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I got some Hokas, some trail running Hokas that were cool, and then my dog bit off the lace, and Hoka wouldn't send me another of the same lace. They said it's not possible.
Right.
And so I had to throw a different colored lace into that one, and it ruined the shoe for me. And
Always
now,
like it was a little off-putting. I knew it was eating
it was like
inside.
there was like a whole color scheme of like yellow, blue, orange.
Right.
Like it's like insane. Like no, something I would normally not buy, but they pulled it off like perfectly. And the laces were navy, and then I couldn't get and had a colored stripe in them. And once I lost that lace, I was like, I hate these shoes, you know. And now they're just sitting in my closet because I.
So have you run in them at all recently?
No.
So
I'm trying to replace them. I really don't like them. And even when I like, yeah, I don't know. And
right.
And that's a really neurotic thing maybe, but it's just, you know, there's something about it's also, and Chris, we talked about this, like that feeling when you're running and you like look down at your feet,
right?
And it's like everything you're looking at, you like the way that it looks, you know, that's important. That's something that I just, it's like, yeah,
it's a complete image when you're kind of looking down and you see the shorts and you see the shoes or whatever socks you're wearing. It's just like visually is very like gratifying.
And it also it encourages you to get out the door, right? If you feel like having a nice pair of shoes can be that encouragement, that thing that you need. That's like, I just want to get out and run in these. I want to see how these are going to feel.
Yeah, they're very much like this motivator that kind of like, I think there's a comedian that has like a joke about it. But you know, all I need is the shoes. It's like, oh, is that all you need? But it's true. There's like a truth behind you just like giving yourself a little treat. How long for you, Mark, like when you have a pair of new shoes, does it like keep you motivated?
Oh, I mean, it can last for a long time. Like I still love these bright orange speed goats that I have that I did.
Those are great.
Yeah, I did the Death Valley Marathon in those. And I feel like that could be like my signature is just always having a pair of bright orange shoes.
Right.
So in case anything ever happens to me, they can at least spot the shoes or like fall off the side of the mountain or something.
Well, or it's like there's that guy when I first moved here who used to run in Silver Lake and Los Feliz, and he was like he would run, you'd see him every day.
Yeah, who was that guy?
I don't know, he died.
He did
like 5 years ago, but you would see him every day, like, you know, he looked like a butterball turkey. The color of his skin was like perfect, and he was always running shirtless. But you just he wore the same thing every day, but you always recognize him. Like, if you are running those speed goats till you're 87 years old, and everyone's going to know you and your neighbor, you know, like that.
There was a guy in Brentwood that was like that, and he would run down San Vicente, and his nickname was Ripped Brentwood because he was like this, like really like in shape, like slick, kind of Clooney looking dude who was probably like in his 60s, but he had like really long hair, and he like kind of had like some tattoos on his chest, but he like looked like slick and like Brentwoody. So he was kind of like done up. But every day you'd see Rip Brentwood just like cutting through, and he would always start from like middle of, you know, all the stuff and go down to the beach and back. There's another person who does that now, who's this older woman, and she walks every day from like, again, the same zone down to the beach and back, but she almost looks like she's having a hard time because I guarantee you could see her every day in the morning.
Yeah, but those people become like, you know, important sort of characters in like your community. It's, you know, that's going to be Mark in the you know, flaming orange sneakers for the rest of his life.
That's like, the goal. Yeah, the long-term goal is to be, I get inspired seeing those older people out there every day. Like you said, they're fixtures, and you just look at them and you're like, damn, they're getting after it. Like I gotta
Yeah.
what am I doing? I got to do something
Yeah.
today.
What do you
Yeah.
think of shoe design, Dan? Like, because you're also like, didn't you work for Nike for a little while, or I can't
No,
remember.
they hired me. They offered me a job when I was 25, but I didn't want to move to Portland, so I didn't work for them.
Like you've been like sneakers wise, like you've been like kind of wearing running
Well,
shoes
there's
in
a
some
shoe.
regard.
There's two things. One of my favorite running shoes ever, which is I don't think I've ever actually run in it, is the Nike Lunar Racer, like the first one. Let me see what that one's called. I've had like multiple pairs throughout my life, but it was like
Oh, of course, that's a great. You had those purple ones of the Lunar Racer, didn't
well,
you?
those are Lunar Racers, but the specific ones were the first Lunar Racers. But think they're what were they called? The Lunar. It's like they're like a gray shoe with like a neon green sole.
Those are
And
great.
those are like, yeah, here they are. The original Lunar Racer. That's to me one of the best looking shoes ever made. Because they had like the reflective silver stuff on them and they were somewhat see-through. So your sock, I always like that when you can like see the sock through the shoe. I always think that's cool. And then currently there's these Berlin Marathon Adidas that I think are really nice. Let me find the name of these. But apparently they're like, they've got something where there's a cutout in the midsole. So
Right.
you end up, if you've got a wide foot, like it feels like you're going to fall over or something.
Nike used to have those shoes that I remember, like they were very early on in like my world of like sneakers, probably like 2003. There was these like Nike, they would biodegrade, like there was this time when like, and like they were like basically like a track shoe. And like, I remember the whole thing is like people at like Undefeated would be wearing them, like stylishly.
The Mayfly?
Yeah, that was what they were. What was the name again?
The Mayfly?
The Mayfly.
Yeah, they were like, they would go for like 100 miles or 100 kilometers.
Yeah, it was like nothing, and then they would like disintegrate. And I remember I would see
I got
people...
a pair. I'm following a pair on eBay right now, oddly enough.
Do you know how many miles they have on them?
They're never worn.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, that sounds like such a fun shoe to me.
But it's one of those things, it's like you buy it and you're going to what? And they're also like a little dainty.
They kind of look like a ballet slipper almost.
Yeah, there's something you could wear like on vacation or like to the beach or something for one trip, and then they would just fall apart.
Yeah. There was also that time too, I remember, just since we've been talking about a lot of shoes on this episode, but I think Nike, there was this period where they were, and we were kind of talking about Born to Run and like kind of like some of the cringe elements of that book, but Nike got on that bandwagon in the height of Born to Run. And they had a whole line of like biodegradable shoes or like reuse shoes. And the whole principle was it was like a flat foot shoe. It was basically going to try and mimic barefoot running. And they were the ugliest shoes I've ever seen. They're so ugly. Like they were like these brown, like Flintstones, like Chukka boot kind of things. And I was just like thinking about how that book has got some really great stuff in it, but it's also like, got its issues, and how basically like the capitalist element of that book and that basically that group of people found its way to like an ugly Chukka boot at the Nike Blue House.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I'd kind of brought it up. Some people actually asked me about that too. They're like, why was that book embarrassing? Or why were you embarrassed to bring it up? And it's like, it did start a pretty nasty obsession with barefoot or minimalist running, which I don't know, I guess some people still practice it and swear by it. I never really went down that road, but but yeah, I mean, Chris actually told me about that documentary, The Infinite Race, which has a really good bit in it where they show the Raramuri runners. They're showing them footage of people running barefoot in Central Park, and these Raramuri runners, the ones that are written about in the book, are just like, their mind is blown. They're like, why would anybody choose to do that? Like, why would you willingly torture yourself and run barefoot like that?
It's so true. I remember listening to someone talk about that book when it came out, and it was at a dinner, and the person who I'm talking about was just bragging so much about how the future is barefoot running. And I think I was sitting in a Cheesecake Factory as I was hearing this conversation.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I was at like dinner with some friends, and there was this one person there who I
At a
didn't know.
Cheesecake
At a
Factory?
Cheesecake Factory. Yeah. You ever go to a Cheesecake Factory with your friends?
No, definitely not with you. No,
Well, there's still always time in our friendship to go.
that is
Um,
true.
and this guy was talking about it, and I was just going like, this guy's super corny, and I was into running, but I constantly think back to how he was just saying this is the best style of running, and then I think exactly to that moment in the film when the one racer is exactly that. Yeah, why would you ever do that? And it's true. I think that that's again like the problematic element of Born to Run is like the one avenue where it talks about barefoot running. It kind of neglects the fact that that was out of necessity.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, everybody's built differently too. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, maybe it makes more sense to if you're a super lightweight person and your feet and your joints can handle it. But for some of us, it's just not feasible.
Well, also too, like they talk about like I think McDougall talks about how in the beginning of the book, like he was like a heel striker, and I could be so wrong, but like I think a lot of problems come if you strike on the heel. Like,
Yeah. It's just bad form.
it's just bad form, you know. It's like, and I think what they kind of preached from like a barefoot angle was like midfoot toe kind of running,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, like I was saying too in the last episode, it's like I hated running so much because I didn't know how to do it properly.
Right.
Like I was that, I also was like a really terrible runner growing up, and it's just because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It's like not knowing how to swim. You like just throw yourself in the pool, and it's like, of course you're not going to be able to like swim a lap.
Yeah, what shoes were you running in when you were doing your mile? Do you remember, Dan?
Oh man,
Doc Martens?
no.
Adidas shelters.
I've definitely run a lap in a pair of Doc Martens because I forgot my PE shoes though.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I mean, they could have been honestly at that time. It would have either been like a pair of Nikes or like an Airwalk maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think. But I don't think I would ever try and run a mile in an Airwalk. That's pretty. That kind of goes against my philosophy.
That's another good point too, because I was probably running junior high era. I was definitely running in skate shoes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, Americas or Vans
Castells
or
or something. Just a big
Yeah.
bulky pair
Yeah.
of like
Heel
leathery.
striking all over the place.
Yeah, oh yeah, flat foot. In Canada, there was the one like half year I went lived in Canada. They have Terry Fox Day, and that is basically a big running day, and I hated it
Why?
too. Well, Terry Fox is this very famous Canadian who actually died of cancer, but as he was raising money for cancer research, he was going to plan on running from one end of Canada to the other end of Canada. And he also only had one leg. He lost his leg initially to cancer, so he was a one-footed runner. He didn't make it, but he just his kind of his energy and stride embodies kind of like Canadian, culture and the drive. And so they have this day every year. I believe it's in the fall. I think in October maybe. I'd love to spend more time talking about Terry Fox because he's just like as good as it gets. But I remember like just having to do that, and it was longer than a mile. I can't remember how long that race was.
Less or more than?
What was that?
It was less or more than a mile?
More than a mile. I remember it being longer and being like, this is brutal. Like, this is so hard. And it's a crazy thing to ask someone to do. It's like, it's not an easy feat to run that much if you don't want to, because it's so mental, right? Like you have to kind of want to mentally buy in to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot to. That's again, like I am very hesitant to recommend running to everybody because there's a lot to buy into physically and mentally.
Well, that always comes up to me too. Like people will go like, if I talk about a marathon, they'll go like, oh, I want to try and do it, or they'll say something to the effect of like, how do I start? And I'll always go, well, do you like running? And if they say no, I'm like, then don't do it.
Right.
Like, it's that simple. Like, it's not something for everybody.
So Dan, when did things change for you then? Like when did you start getting into soccer and running and all that?
I guess I was like probably like 20, it was probably like 10 years ago.
So it was after high school, like throughout high school, you were still.
Oh, no, high school I like skateboarded and like didn't do physical activity beyond that. Uh, College I lived in New York, so I didn't.
Yeah, you guys wouldn't go running in New York?
No, not really. No, not really at all. No, it wasn't. Then I moved here, and like that, when I moved here, it was the period of the barefoot shoe where you like saw these people prancing in little 5-finger shoes all over. Like everyone was like learning to run the right way for the first time.
Right,
so They all had like the horse hop up and down Griffith Park.
Right, the Vibram.
And like no one was eating bread at that time. And, it was like a really specific period in like Los Angeles health and wellness. It also was before people talked about wellness, beyond like now that's like a real lifestyle you can get into. But that was sort of like
pre-influencer.
Right.
What did you say?
Before the influencers kind of took over that space.
Yeah. There was no Instagram. So like the only way you could see the prancing 5-finger people is if you were really out in the streets with them. Kind of like skateboarding.
Totally.
But yeah. So when I first moved here, because you utilize this place in a different way than you would a city like New York.
I wanted to ask you about the when I would talk to you about running early on, you would use these apps that had these workouts. So I wanted you to kind of explain to the Never Not Run listeners like what those apps were and what you got out of them.
Well, I guess there's like Running for Weight Loss was the app that I would use, and my friend Alex put me on to those. And it's like interval training. So you basically, they're just calling out to you like, all right, going to run for 3 minutes. And they're like, sprint 80%, 30 seconds. And then you do that, then you walk, and then you sprint 15 seconds, 100%, whatever. And it's like I think they want you to run it 3 times a week. That's like sort of the schedule. And you obviously build up to where you're not walking at all and you're sprinting a lot. And I just have always felt like I can definitely go out, like I can go out and run 4 miles and it's like cool. The most I've ever run is 7 with Chris. I've never done more than that. So I don't want anyone to think I can do more than that.
Oh yeah, no, that's like the main disclaimer on the head of all of these podcasts. Mm-hmm. Like it's a grab bag of what we're gonna get in regards to talking about.
No, but it's funny because people, that like sometimes you'll talk to someone and they're like, yeah, man, like I'm just trying to work up to a 5K. And you're like, 5K, dude, what?
I know.
But then you're also, like, you know what? If you don't like to run, 5K is a long way to go. Like straight up. And so but also I've never attempted more than 7. One day maybe I would, but those apps were great just because it's like I like having someone in my ear kind of telling me what to do.
You were a big Barry's boot camp guy too, I remember.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a big Barry's boot camp guy. But yes, that was one of the things that I did in my cycling through fitness trends in Los Angeles. Yes.
Dan was a big old Barry's boot camp guy.
Yeah.
I did it too with you. Man. Well, no, I'm not.
No, I did do that for a minute. I would, get into the red room and try and knock some things out. But, I didn't, in the end, Barry's, it feels a little reckless in terms of the way you like throw the 15-pound weights around.
Right.
You're sort of like, and it's like, I just was like, for someone with the back thing, I was like, this is not for me. Plus, the running in there, dude, when you're like at 12 on the treadmill and
right,
I had this massive fear at Barry's that I was going to go up to 12 on the treadmill and then I was going to misstep and fly backwards. And there was going to be someone doing like a tricep press. And as I flew off the treadmill, as they were like peak on the tricep press, my back of my head would hit the top of the dumbbell and I would die. And that was like, I was just like, dude, I'm not going to die in this exercise class. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I always felt
had a 6-pack. I'm never, I don't know if I'm ever going to have a 6-pack, but it like wasn't happening in Barry's and I didn't want to die hitting my head on a dumbbell. So I stopped doing that. And it was expensive. But as far as classes go, I think if there's any classes that I like, I definitely Pilates is I think is a really great that's a great exercise. And then if you mix that with the running and one other sport, you feel pretty good about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're playing tennis a lot now.
Yeah, mainly doing that. That's the next trend I'm on.
That's what I've noticed. A lot of people our age are shifting into tennis. That's like it's the time in our lives where we're gonna like get really into wine and tennis.
Well, but I'm curious about that because I wonder like if I don't know, maybe that's when my dad got into tennis and golf and that stuff too, was like at this age. I don't really remember. I guess so. Maybe that's just what it is.
I've been thinking a lot about that. I've been thinking about like trend and desire and things that you want to do and like the age we're at, like, and how I remember during the pandemic and like this was something that Dan and Mark and I were doing. We were playing golf a lot, and I hadn't played golf in maybe like 15 years.
But that's what I'm saying is that also, that's where the especially anything anyone's picked up in the last 2 years. I wonder how much of it it's on the one hand, it's like, it's very cool that you've seen not everybody, but you see a lot of people around you have picked up new hobbies over the last 2 years where it's like, this person's like into biking now. And it's like, a lot of that was just out of necessity of what could we do together, like we couldn't hang. So the only way we could hang was like going to golf at random places around Los Angeles. It wasn't, that just was like what we,
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I guess my question is like, when I get into these things is like, am I getting into these things because everybody around me is, or because there's this certain circumstance with the pandemic that sort of forced us into, like, because there was no soccer for 2 years because
exactly
you couldn't breathe on each other. So that was like, what else am I going to do to fill my time? So in that sense, it doesn't seem to me as much of a like, oh, well, I'm like 37, 38. Let me like go play golf now. It was like, well, I don't know. What else am I going to do?
Right.
So, but that being said, there was also, I remember like doing golfing and playing tennis as a kid, and then you get into skateboarding and you think that stuff's like, you're not interested in it. And you couldn't imagine you'd ever go back to like, like going out golfing like your dad did and like doing business deals on the golf course or whatever it was that he would, people like played in charity tournaments all the time. It's like, So, but also I think, even through the pandemic, running was something like that for us, where we could meet up and all go for a run. And that was like a safe, like a safe activity where you wouldn't necessarily get COVID.
Totally. Where was your, I guess, well, we had a lot of, we go to the horse track over in Burbank, and that's kind of been a zone we like to go running.
Dojo?
Yeah, that's the current dojo.
Hollywood Reservoir.
But I remember that, it can get rough down there because I don't really know the rules in regards to the horses. And, my fear when we would run down there would be like, we'd go be like running behind like a Clydesdale and like I would spook the horse and get like a boot right to my head. And that would always be my fear.
Well, they told you that, right? At some point, didn't they stop?
Yeah, we got yelled at.
Yeah, because there's something kind of like really awesome and beautiful about you're kind of running alongside these horses, but then you forget that like, they
could kill you.
Gran Apple could like just like take your head off.
Well, and for the riders too. I mean, the riders, I think, were the ones that were like, if you spook our horses, we're going to get tossed. So you guys got to be careful.
Yeah. So anyone who's hearing this, there is a place you can go, but you got to respect the people who are there first. And that's the horses. Respect the animals.
Yeah, but that's just a general philosophy for anyone listening to the show in general. You just got to respect the people that were there first, right? That's
that's true.
That's very true. What's your favorite zone? I guess. Well, here's a question: in LA, where's your favorite place to go running?
I think I like the ranch a lot down in Burbank. That's really fun. The last run I went on, I went down to the Arroyo in Pasadena, and I really enjoyed that. That was a cool place to run. I'm trying to think. I mean, the beach with you.
It's always
You
fun.
get out the Golden Bowl and hit like a run. That's always a great zone. Um, yeah, those are probably, there's lots of, I used to always run the Silver Lake Reservoir, and now that feels like it's a little too
Yeah, what
crowded
is it
over
with the
there.
Silver Lake Reservoir? Like I just ran it recently and I really enjoy it, but there's an energy there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I just feel like it's like you're like gonna run into lots of people,
Got it.
and
Maybe that's all. It is a very congested place to run. There are a lot of people doing like a lot of things there.
yeah, and especially if you haven't seen someone in 2 years, and then you pass them on the reservoir, and you're like you just wave, but you probably should say hello because it's been 2+ years since you spoke to them. But you also are like, I don't want to stop. Like I'm in like
Right.
I didn't come here to chat, so it's just better to stay away from there. But there's something that I mean, even when you're running there, there's like that's one of the best views in Los Angeles is like when you're running around that reservoir and it's sort of like dusk
Oh yeah.
and you got like the lights on the hill and the water. It's like feels kind of Mediterranean. I really like that.
Yeah, LA's got this way of kind of shape shifting on you sometimes to make you feel like you're somewhere else when you're not. Like I get that sense when I'm there. I feel like I'm like like Lake Como or something like that. Like I've never even
Yeah,
been
yeah.
there, but I get, you can kind of look at all the houses on the hill and you're going by the reservoir. It's beautiful.
Griffith
As a
Park is
Hollywood.
another good one too, where there's a lot of little pockets where you're like either surrounded by pine, evergreen trees that are kind of watered around
Yeah.
the clock, so you look like you're in Oregon or something if you squint.
Griffith Park, you said?
Yeah, Griffith Park.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
are
that
these weird
fake
zones.
forest.
Yeah, exactly. That they shoot TV commercials.
Yeah, I mean,
on.
well, basically, yeah, what we're talking about is just Hollywood. Like, they built whatever you can build whatever reality you want here. It's not real, but it can feel real for like a glimpse as
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
pass
it's so
through it.
true. Yeah, it's a really remarkable place. Like we were talking to I've also decided that we're gonna build up to our Sam Griesmer episode, and he'll be at our 1 year anniversary show. But we're gonna keep
He's like
talking about him
S53.
like he's on the show.
He's going to be the phantom that just kind of looms over each episode.
Sam was talking about just he did like a Marina Del Rey run, and I think we're gonna have an NNR run that is going to be down at Marina Del Rey in the spring. So everyone stay tuned for that. We're going to do a meetup run down there. More details coming soon. But yeah, like that area is just so beautiful to go out to, and
Yeah.
those are my brutal 20s. If you ever find yourself out by the UCLA, the rowing club on a run, you're pretty far.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty far.
Yeah, I don't even know where that is.
Well, Dan, I wanted to just ask, did you have any more questions for Dan? Because it's been like really, I love talking to you, man, because like you're just such an elaborate speaker. I really, really like love the details you highlight. Like you're so, like, it's just so fun to listen to you. Did you have any more questions for Dan?
I mean, this has been a great chat so far. I mean, I think we're at a good point with everything.
Yeah, what's your runner's high, man?
Ooh, I like this. I like that. I'm really, I like that also because I like this. I have this idea of food as drugs, like people who eat to get high.
Yeah.
So I really like the idea of like, what are these other things besides drugs that they're doing this, they're getting you high. So runner's high has always been, I mean, it's even the first time I got runner's high, like when you felt your brain like
Pulsing.
expanding. Yeah. That was, I mean, if you've ever had a panic attack, that it feels like that's the first time you ever think you're going to die.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's a really shocking feeling to be like, oh my God, I think I'm dying. This is what,
Mm-hmm.
luckily I had my first one with Chris and he had one before, so he could walk me through the fact that I wasn't actually dying.
Sure.
But definitely the first time I got runner's high, that was like an otherworldly experience in my body. Cause it was like to feel your brain going like that was really, it was messed up. And actually another time I was talking to my dad the other day because he went to Tahiti on this like cruise, and he was talking about and my dad's sick, so he can't really travel for another couple years. This was like the last trip he could get last trip he could go on before he can no longer travel for a while.
Okay.
So he went to Tahiti, and we were talking about, like, oh man, it's so hot there. And he's like, yeah, we were just like, you don't even sweat, it's so hot. And, and like a couple years ago, I went to St. Bart's and I went for a run because I was like, oh, I should go for a run here. I guess running's cool because one of the amazing things about running is anywhere you go, you can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to lead into two stories. But I went on this run in St. Bart's, like out to this like beach, and it was probably like 85 degrees, and it was really humid. And I go for this run at one point, and I'm kind of like, I'm like, okay, cool, like feeling it, kind of not checking my time, but sort of like tripping out as I'm like driving by these people's houses in this foreign country I've never been to. And at one point I hit this part in the trail where there's like all these turtles, and I was kind of feeling out of it. And then I hit this point where I see all these like shells, these like colored shells, and then these like heads swivel around, and I don't really know what I'm looking at, and they're turtles. And in that moment I panicked and thought that like I was going to have to fight off these turtles or something.
Whoa.
They were really just trying to eat the fruit that was there. And so anyways, I had this weird experience with these turtles, and then I'm sort of like, man, is something going on here? And then I kept running a little bit more. I probably got another quarter of the mile, and at that point I almost passed out. And I stopped, and I started to put my hands on my knees, and then I had to like sit down. And I was listening to this like Roger Deakins Coen Brothers podcast where like none of it was even making sense anymore.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even run a mile. And then I was like, I'm going to pass out. This is like, something's going on. And so I was telling my dad that story, and he's like, oh, but that was so dangerous to run in those conditions. And I didn't know, and maybe you guys could enlighten me, maybe I'm wrong, but he was saying like when it's that hot and that humid and you can't really sweat, it's really not a healthy time to be running.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I haven't learned yet.
Yeah, well, because you run in Los Angeles, but this is like, we're talking like 85 degrees with like 75% humidity, But
Yeah.
it was this weird thing because it was normally I can handle going for like a mile run, but this particular mile, I couldn't even get through a mile without thinking I was going to pass out. And according to my father, it had to do with the high temperature, high humidity. Another story with running that was an important moment in my life is, one thing I discovered Young Thug while running, because there was this mixtape he put out a long time ago called Black Portland, and I would listen to it running around the Silver Lake Reservoir like every day. And that was sort of like, and to this day, that's still like every year on Spotify, he's always in my top 5 of like of artists that I listen to. But that definitely, I remember like, that was kind of a runner's high, is like being exposed to him on my run, and kind of like you're by yourself in that, it's like, it's not in your car. It's like you get to like connect with this guy, and he's transformative for me. And then another one was, so my mom passed away in 2014, and I didn't really know. I was in Paris, and I didn't really know, like I went to my friend's wedding, and then I was in Paris, and I was like, I talked to my mom, and then they're just like, say goodbye to your mom. So I'm like, okay, goodbye. I get on the phone. I'm like, hey mom, like she couldn't really answer me, but she was like,
right.
Whatever you say to your mom when she dies, I told her I was going to get married or whatever. And then they were like, all right, that's it. And I was like, okay. And then like that night, very sad, obviously. And then I went to bed, and then the next morning I woke up, and I didn't know what to do. I was sort of like, what do I do, man? I was with my now wife and her sister and my brother-in-law. But I didn't really know. I didn't really want to be like, what would, when you go through something like that, what are you supposed to,
Sure.
What's anyone going to talk to you about?
Right,
It's like, you want to talk about getting a croissant? Like, so I got up that next morning, and this is also tied in a weird way, but there was this like artist that I got an email from some artist being like, hey, can you do a music video for this person? And it was like a song produced by Dev Hynes. And I was like, oh, sick. Like my mom died. And then maybe this is a sign that like things are going to work out. Cause at that point in my life, stuff work wise wasn't really like happening in a great way.
Right.
I was like, oh, cool. So then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for a run. I was like, this is probably the best thing I could do. And then, of course, because of the, well, I don't even know why, but then I basically just like ran around Paris listening to Blood Orange. And it was like one of the most,
Wow.
it was a very surreal experience because it was like early morning Paris. It was it was July 21st or 20. Yeah, I think it was July 21st, 2014. And I just was like on my own, like running through the Luxembourg Gardens and all these places and like had the Blood Orange album going. And it was really like, it just was that was all I could do to kind of figure out a way to process like what had just happened the day before, you know? And in that way, that's cool about running to me too, because it really is like, you know, you get to be in your own headspace. Like no one gets to come in your brain when you're doing that. And
Right.
that's like a cool thing. And then funny and like to cap that story off or end it. So then like, you know, probably 6 months later, I'm like in a nightclub in Los Angeles and I see that I didn't get the music video, by the way, but I see the dude who the music video was for at this nightclub. I'm like, oh man, I gotta like talk to this guy. So I walk up to him and I'm like, yo, he's like, what? And I'm like, dude, like my mom died like a year ago. And right after she died, they hit me up to like have me do a music video for you. And I thought it was like a sign. So and this guy was kind of like, he was looking at me like, why are you telling me this, man? and then I was like, but yeah, man, I just want you to know that was like a ray of light, like right after my mom died. And he was like, all right, man. Like he kind of gave me this like, dude, not like, don't talk to me in the nightclub, like go away.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty whack of him, even though it's probably pretty like maybe oversharing of me. But anyways, that definitely probably if I were to really talk about the runner's high, that thing with like running the day after my mom died, that was like
sounded like amazing.
With the music and everything, that was kind of like that was a runner's high, but in a way that I hope to not have to experience many other times in my life.
Yeah, of course. It's an incredible story, though.
That's an incredible story, Dan. That's really amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's it's powerful stuff, and I've come to kind of like realize nowadays as I'm not running nearly as much as I used to, like just like the kind of the therapy I get out of just going and running and exactly that, like you just get that time with yourself.
You said it really beautifully too. It's nothing can enter your brain at that point.
Yeah, it's so true. I think we should leave it on that because that was just incredible.
Yeah.
Dan, thank you so much for being on episode 2 of the Never Not Run podcast.
Yeah, anytime. And remember, Vitalite, hydrate faster. 2 scoops dissolved in 16 ounces of water will get you through the day.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you.
And we will be in touch soon. Love you, man.
All right. Adios.
Adios. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I think he's such like a he's just such a storyteller.
Right. It's funny because I was nervous, honestly, on the way here. Like, what are we gonna have to say to Dan? And then he had some amazing stories.
Well, I think that's going to be what's awesome about this pod is we're going to get these moments from people who haven't run at all or have run a lot, and we can get these really interesting stories out of them because it is a really great connector, and it's just so interesting to kind of see what's going to be popping up. I want to say thank you just to also the people who reached out the last week who listened to episode 1. Mark and I are really excited about this.
Yeah, we got some really good feedback and was really surprised at all the different people that connected to it, that listened and that reached out to us.
Yeah, so we're going to keep going. We're going to keep having great interviews, and then maybe Mark and I will just jam out some other times. I do have to say, we've got, nevernotrun.com. You can also reach Dan at his website at calcuttacable.com. That is Daniel Pappas's director's website. He's done some amazing music videos and is just a really great creative brain. We're really thankful for having him on the show.
And also some amazing stuff with you. Like Art with Edward.
Yes. We've done some pretty great stuff. Dan is an all around great human being, so we're really great to have him. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff coming down the pike. We've been getting really excited about all the people we're going to interview.
Yeah, and also check out the Strava Club that we just started.
Yeah, we've got the Strava Club going on. Mark started that up for us.
Yeah, so we can finally kind of connect with some runners on another platform, maybe so we're not so Instagram heavy, and we're going to try to do some races out of that platform.
Yeah, definitely coming soon. I'm going to be announcing some digital races that are going to be coming up. Love to get one maybe going in for the first day of spring when we get out of this winter hellhole that we're in. And I am very excited to get into all of that with all of you soon. But thank you so much for tuning in. This was a great episode.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. This has been the Never Not Run podcast. I'm your host, Chris Candy.
And I'm Mark Nieto.
We will be back next week.